Dziękuję Państwu za przybycie. To jest taki nietypowy czas, czwartek wieczorem, w związku z tym nie ma dzisiaj tak dużo nas, ale kolega będzie jeszcze ogłoszę, że będziesz w niedzielę w Syrenie.
Tak.
Będzie jeszcze, tam możemy spotkać. Proszę Państwa, nazywam się Marek Kijek, mam zaszczyt być prezesem SPPA, Stowarzyszenia Profesjonalistów Polskich w Australii. Mam opłacone składki.
Brawo.
Zajęło 2 lata.
Ale za 2 lata naprzód. I ja chciałem serdecznie podziękować Holkerowi za udostępnienie nam tego venue. Cały czas to robi. Na szczęście w zarządzie naszego stowarzyszenia większość tutaj członków zarządu to są pracownicy Holkeru. Więc dzięki temu chyba mamy tutaj jakieś dobre układy z tym wszystkim. Nasza organizacja stara się zorganizować takie prelekcje jak z ciekawymi Polakami, australijskimi, którzy są mają polskie pochodzenie. Mieliśmy tutaj szereg wykładów z różnych dziedzin, komputery kwantowe, anestezjologia, nurkowanie, pszczoły, etc., architektura, samoloty, które nie odbijają fal radarowych, to były z dawnych czasów, sieci elektryczne, także mamy dużą historię bardzo ciekawych spotkań. Robiliśmy to na Mount Waverly, w ośrodku społecznym na Mount Waverly. Robimy to teraz tutaj, bo możemy. Proszę Państwa, chciałbym przedstawić krótko naszego celebrytę Krzysztofa Wojtkowskiego, który urodził się w Australii i od najmłodszych lat już uciekał rodzicom do lasu i do buszu, bo jest tak skonstruowany psychicznie, że lubi naturę, kocha naturę, to go bardzo ciekawi. W wieku lat 10 wstąpił do harcerstwa polskiego, od zucha do drużynowego, awansował w stopniach harcerskich i w 1997 roku z moim synem, też Krzysztofem, zrobili, może nie w tym samym czasie, zrobili 3 pióra. To jest, proszę Państwa, harcerska taka odznaka za to, że idzie się na 24 godziny samemu do lasu czy gdzieś, żeby nikt nikogo nie widział. Jak mi powiedział, było to większe przeżycie niż jego 64 dni w buszu bez nikogo w Nowej Zelandii. Także...
To nie na jeden dzień, tam 3 dni jest próba 3 pióra.
Ale
Jeden dzień się nie...
chować jeden dzień.
Ale
na jeden ostatni dzień się idzie do lasu.
No
Ale
tak.
jeden dzień milczenia, prawda? Jeden dzień bez jedzenia. I trzeci dzień, to znaczy 2 dni bez jedzenia, bo
To jest
tylko
jeden dzień
nas
Też prawda.
dlatego nie ma harcmistrzek, które mogły zdać. Bo bez zmówienia.
Bez mówienia to by było ciężko. No dobra, już dajcie.
Słuchajcie, w związku z tym zapraszam naszego kolegę, prelegenta.
Dziękuję. Dziękuję bardzo wszyscy. I'll be doing this in English today just because it's a lot easier for me to articulate myself, so I hope that's not going to offend anyone too much. Please ask lots of questions. I'm going to sort of just go through a little bit of my upbringing and then how I discovered the show itself, and then things that have happened afterwards. So yes, just shout out questions as we go, and I've got lots of props to show as well as we go. So as I was described, I joined harcerstwo at the age of about 10. Loved it, loved the outdoors. I've always loved the outdoors. I've been in the bush with the family ever since I was in nappies, and it's where I feel most comfortable. I do remember at one point I went on my first hike with harcerstwo. This was at the back of Hillsville, up one of the mountains, and it was probably one of the worst experiences of my entire life. there I was, a little fat kid, about 11 years old, with a backpack that was too big, with all the wrong stuff. It was raining, there was leeches everywhere. I just kept falling down, hated it. I wanted to quit afterwards, but my parents said, stay in it, give it another go. I did. I'm glad I did, because that's, I think, where I got most of my skills that sort of helped me survive the 64 days on the land. So I currently work at a barramundi farm, and I raise barramundi and murray cod for the live fish market in Australia. And I thought that this is going to be a great thing, particularly with the show, knowing about fish and how they grow and how they live. And has everyone seen the show? Has anyone seen the show? Okay. And you remember how many fish I caught?
I remember 64 days.
Yeah, I caught no fish.
Yeah. I remember you said
Yeah.
fish, yes.
So the whole show sort of came about. I was sitting at home back in 2023. It was a Saturday afternoon, probably mid-February, and we just finished watching Married at First Sight season, whatever it was, with my partner at the time. And it was my turn to pick something for the TV, and I remember I was in the kitchen making some drinks, and then I hear from the lounge room saying, "Oh, what about this show?" And I'm like, "What's the show?" "Oh, it's called Alone." "Oh, what's it about?" It's about some people that go out in the bush and survive as long as they can." I go, "Yeah, it sounds interesting. Let's give it a go." So we put on the first season of the American show, and I was glued to the TV. I probably binged the first 2 seasons just back to back across that weekend. And I remember sitting there watching the show going, I don't know if I do it like that, or oh, you probably shouldn't hold your knife or act like that because you might slip. And oh, yep, there they go, they've hurt themselves. And just commenting about how they were constructing things, going, oh, that's edible, that's edible. And then my partner turned to me and actually said, well, why don't you apply for the show? And I go, well, it's an American show, so probably not going to be available to Australians. And then, out of interest, I just opened the laptop and Googled it to see how many seasons there were. In the Australian show, the Australian version of Alone was just starting, and they had applications open for season 2. So I figured I should put my money where my mouth is and send in an application. The application process it took a while. The whole process was about 3 months. It started off by filling out an application form, probably about 12 pages online. I had to do a video introducing myself. So I thought to myself, okay, I want to stand out a little bit. How am I going to do this? So I had, in my lounge room, lit the fire, put on my bathrobe, sort of stretched out in front of it and go, hello. Apparently it got a few nods, and yeah, that worked. The other thing that I needed to do was a couple of videos starting fires using a ferro rod and some other methods. So I used cotton wool and ash, where you can actually use friction to start a fire. And I had to do a 3-minute video of myself treading water. So I called up my parents and go, Mama, do you mind if I pop round and just sit in the pool for 3 minutes, please? I'm like, okay. Anyway, did that, sent it all in. And then about a week later, I was driving home from work. I get a phone call from some random number in Sydney. I'm like, yeah, okay, answer it. And it's like, g'day, is this Krzysztof? Yes. We would like to discuss your application for a loan. And well, yes, let's do it. And I'd just been camping. I had my backpack right next to me. I go, are we doing this? Yes, let's do it. And so it was just an initial phone call saying, okay, we've got your applications. Are you interested? Yes, I am. Okay, we're interested. We'll make a time to get in contact with you, and then we'll have more questions. So they scheduled an interview for about a week after that, and it was an initial lot of questions, basically about my background, what my interests are, why I want to apply for the show. After that, then they sent me a pack of a whole bunch of different things that I had to fill out. So a couple more videos, had to get a full medical check. Then they scheduled an appointment with their psychiatrist, just to make sure that I'm not completely crazy, but just crazy enough. After that, it was flown up to Sydney for a meet and greet with the SBS heads that were doing the show, and a skills check. So they had a gentleman by the name of Gordon Dedman who runs an outdoor school, basically taking each of us individually around, and it'd be start a fire, tell us what plants you can eat, and fire a bow and arrow. And until this point, I used to shoot a bow that was quite light with very heavy arrows. So when he handed me this bow, I was shooting high and into the bush somewhere. I think they lost 3 arrows because of me. Then I got to meet their doctor as well, and we went through another medical check. And can you pick something heavy up? Yes. Can you pick it up with your left hand, with your right hand? Can you drag 30 kilos across a room? And 30 kilos was important because that's about the weight of all the camera gear that they gave us to take out with us. What else happened there? Then we sat down with the head of SBS, the producer for ITV, and the psychologist, and had just a round-table conversation. And after that, they stuck me on a plane and sent me home. And I remember sitting on the plane with a glass of red and watching season 1 going, oh, I wonder how this will go. 3 days, they said, we'll let you know in the next week or so. 3 days later, I get a phone call saying, okay, thank you for your application, but as you know, there's been about 10 to 12,000 people that have applied for this show, and unfortunately, it is a very, very tough selection criteria. So in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, okay, this is sorry you're not getting it, but we'd like to offer you a position on the show. Like, wow, 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 wow. It took me about 5 minutes to calm down, and I'm like, yes, let's do it, sign me up, let's go. So there it was. And up to this point, I've been sort of preparing, expecting it to be Tasmania. So I made myself all these little cue cards, which have, on one side, it's a picture of a plant that I could learn what it is. And then on the back, I'd have written whether it's edible, whether it's not edible. So just all sorts of different things. So for instance, coastal saltbush. But then what they did is they told us the place you're going to go is in the southern hemisphere. They gave us a temperature range of, I think, -9 to +9 degrees. Heavy rainfall, and that's all they told us. So using that information, I opened up an atlas and was like, okay, southern hemisphere, okay, so that eliminates all of this. Okay, this sort of temperature range, so if you draw a line across the Earth where that sort of temperature range is there. Okay, it's got to allow hunting, it's got to allow fishing, so that sort of narrows it down to either New Zealand or Patagonia. So then, okay, this is SBS, they probably don't have that much money, so it's going to be New Zealand. And then I looked at a map of New Zealanders for particular areas where it could possibly be. I had a couple of guesses, and one of them happened to be correct. It was down south in the Fiordlands. So then I just, it's relative. So then it was time to start prepping. So again, I've made a whole new stack of cards of different flora and fauna in the area. I was thinking to myself, okay, I've watched all these different series of Alone, and the one common thing is people starve. So what am I going to do? I'm going to start bulking, which was the best. I could go to work, I could have a hamburger for lunch, I could have a hamburger for dinner, and then have second dinner. It was like being a hobbit. Your second breakfast, 11sies, supper. Yeah, I loved it. It was probably the best part of the whole preparation process. And then each night I'd put on YouTube and look at different videos from New Zealand, and the fellow that was actually won season 3, I got onto his channel and I found his most informative. Was learning all the different scat patterns and the footprints and the materials that you could use in New Zealand to build shelter, and it was fun. I learned so many cool things. So then, as this was progressing, I get an email, and as those of you that have watched the show, you get to select 10 special items to take with you. And they sent me the list of what I could choose from. So in the end, I picked my 10 items, which are here if you want to have a look a little bit later. and I'm glad they're here so I don't have to remember what they are. So the first thing I did was I grabbed a sleeping bag. Sorry, I'll just cut back a little bit. Part of the whole process is they gave each participant a kitty of $1,500 to spend on new gear. I think I ended up spending $3, but we'll ignore that. And the most expensive thing that I got was this sleeping bag. It's an Australian-made down sleeping bag. I thought about whether I'd go down or synthetic for a while. I generally prefer synthetic sleeping bags, but for the climate that we were going in, I thought as time will progress, I'm going to lose body fat. I'm going to be feeling the cold a lot more, so I'll get the absolute warmest sleeping bag I could. And this one's rated to -19. Best decision. The only problem with a down sleeping bag is that you can't get it wet, because the second you get it wet, yep, you're going to feel the cold. But I'm glad I made that decision. The next thing that I needed was something to start a fire with. So I got my ferro rod and striker. So it's a really simple process. Metal strikes against the ferro rod, creates sparks. That's how you get your fire. We weren't allowed to take matches. We weren't allowed to take a lighter. This I actually made from an old chisel, thinking it originally was about this long, but we were limited by how long we could actually have it, so I had to cut it back. But my plan was that I'd take this with me and then sharpen the edge into a chisel and then be able to have that as another tool to use. Next thing that I needed was a multi-tool, because I like to craft things, so that's where the Leatherman came in. I enjoy my fishing, even though I wasn't very successful out there, so I had fishing hooks, 25 of those, and a length of 300 metres of monofilament 25-pound fishing line. I took a shaqueta, which is, if I can pull it out, one of these. This is a Fiskars shaqueta. It's not the most popular choice for the show, but I very much like this brand, and you can get them razor sharp, and they're very good at doing fine work as well, where you can knock things. And a large axe is also a lot safer than a small axe, because you're less likely to miss and clip yourself in the leg or something. We also had a pole saw, which is this one here. This is a silky katana boy. These days, this is pretty much a standard for every participant on a loan. These things, after a chainsaw, you will cut through things the fastest with one of these. And no, I'm not sponsored, but yes, sir.
Was there a limit on how many fish hooks you could have?
25. Pop that away. We had a cooking pot, 2 litres, and it had to be aluminium or cast iron. I went for cast iron because you can also use it as a frying pan if you need to. And then we had the bow and arrow. This was the thing that I probably spent the most time umming and ahhing about, because the chance of catching big game, reasonably slim, but my thought process was I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I thought, okay, well, how do we make the best of this? We're limited to either a recurve bow or a longbow. I've fired both, but I find myself more comfortable with a longbow, so I went with the longbow. And then I actually made my I made this for the arrows, and I purposely did a couple of things with this. I put these silver things along the edge, just in case I need them to make like a fishing lure or something. And I purposely used real fur for the outside, because if I want to tie a fly, I'd have that as an option as well. And then we get 9 arrows. And then the other thing that I got was 100 metres of paracord. Paracord is great because it's got 7 strands inside that you can pull out, and then suddenly you've made 7 times the amount of line. It's also great for doing lures. You can see it, and if you're going to be building things, you're going to need something to tie everything together. So that was my selection of 10 items. Looking back on it, the only thing that I probably would do differently is not take the paracord, but I would take all my clothes that I took with me, pull out every single drawstring, my shoelaces, and replace everything with paracord. And then in its place, I'd ask if I could take a pillow, because that was probably the thing that I missed the most out there after food. Yes, so those are my 10 items. Went through that. Then again, there was a whole bunch of more paperwork because I needed to fill in an application to get a hunting license, a fishing permit, all for New Zealand, and then waivers of liability, non-disclosure agreements, and then I had to get non-disclosure agreements for the family and then for my work, and that was a fun conversation. So I went into work. I remember speaking to my boss, and this was just before I was going to tell him that I was going on this. He goes, have you heard of this show that's on SBS? It's called Alone. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, those people are crazy on that show. Oh, funny you mention that. I'm going to need 3 months-ish off work. Eventually he came around and gave it to me, and yep, got him to sign the non-disclosure agreement as well. And then the next stage was they sent a film crew out to my home to do some of the background filming and basically having a meal together. So I had my rodzice, my partner, my brother, and yeah, we just had a nice family meal, and they sort of filmed me packing my things and then going to the car and walking away to give that sort of background story. And then I get an email, and attached to it is my plane ticket to New Zealand, and it's for a week away. So it's okay. Hey boss, I'm going to need time off. I'm leaving. Not very happy about that, but that's how it sort of played out. So then I board the plane to New Zealand. Well, prior to boarding the plane to New Zealand, I get to Melbourne Airport, and I'm trying to suss out if there's anyone else from Melbourne going, looking for someone that looks like an outdoorsy sort of person. Didn't have any luck spotting anyone, and I sort of sit down in the lounge, and this young girl sort of runs up to me and goes, "Are you by any chance doing Alone?" And we were specifically told, don't talk to any other contestants, you're not allowed to discuss this with anyone. I'm like, maybe. And she introduced herself. Her name was Corinne. She was in season 3. She was one of the substitutes for season 2. And so we started talking, and we went through like our different strategies and things, and she sort of educated me a little bit about some of the weeds and things that were in New Zealand. I talked about some of the mushrooms and things. Anyway, we jump on the plane, we land in New Zealand, and then she gets waved through customs and I get stopped, and they go through absolutely everything because, of course, I tick the box for, are you carrying any weapons? Yes. What are you carrying? I've got an axe. I've got a bow. I've got a knife. What's it for? I can't tell you. We get through customs, and then on the other side we've got one of the producers who sort of hold a sign up for us. Yes, hello, that's me. Okay, we get taken out to a bus, we get sat on the bus. We've got everyone else on the bus. No one's allowed to talk to anyone. Everyone's wearing masks. It's very, very hush-hush, very quiet. And then the bus leaves. And so we flew to Queenstown, and then I think the bus ride from there to the lake was a couple of hours. And yeah, it's an awkward bus ride when you're sitting and the sun's setting, and then there's all these strangers sitting around you, and it's dead silent. So we pull up at this boot camp that was set up. We all disembark off the bus, and then we get a couple of the producers coming up introducing themselves. And then they said, okay, you can now talk to each other. You're going to get separated out into your different huts. So we each had a little hut for ourselves. And we're going to come back, and then we're going to do the full introductions and start the process. So we did that, sort of unpacked, got comfortable, went back to the main hall, and they introduced all the crew that was going to be involved. So there was a bunch of producers that would watch all the footage that we'd send back to them. There'd be some executive producers that will then select different things to create the story. There was a bunch of support people. There was first aiders. There was outdoor specialists. And then we also got introduced to some Maori people because we were technically on their land, so they did a similar welcome to country thing for New Zealand for us, and super lovely people. Boot camp consisted mostly of learning how to use the cameras, so setting up your shots. So for instance, you put 2 cameras here, you don't put 1 camera here, 1 camera here, because that's called crossing the shot and it looks awkward when you try and splice it together. How to mic yourself up, how to change the batteries on all the equipment. And it was just, even if it was just the boot camp and learning how to use cameras and set all that up, it would have been worth the trip. It was like a masterclass in just camera equipment. And the other thing that they did for us was tell us everything that we weren't allowed to do. And that list was quite long. We very quickly learned that it's better not to ask questions because they might say no. It's easier to just keep quiet and then apologize afterwards. So it was very long. So couldn't hunt the birds, couldn't collect mushrooms, couldn't eat the eels, couldn't eat mollusks, couldn't eat crustaceans. Then when it came to the plants, we couldn't harvest all the plants in an area, could only take a fraction of the plant. So it was effectively survival on hard mode. But it is what it is. And I went in thinking, I've spent all this time and effort looking at specifically mushrooms, because jestem Polak, so. and eels, because they're easy to catch. You just throw a line in at night, bam, that's an eel. And we couldn't do that either. Okay, so thankfully I had all my cards with me that I was flicking through and just still cramming all that information. And the other thing that I did was look at some of the weeds that were introduced, because I figured there'd be a bit of a curveball with what we couldn't do, but I don't think they'd tell us, no, you can't harvest weeds. Thankfully they didn't, and that was probably the biggest saving grace. Towards the end of boot camp, we got to go to a marae, which is a traditional Maori house where we got welcomed again, and we got to share a meal with them, and it was really lovely. Throughout this boot camp period, they were changing our diet also. It was going from less processed foods to more whole grains, less meat, more vegetables, which I didn't particularly appreciate because I like my miso. And I remember our last meal, it was a bowl of rice with some vegetables and I think a piece of smoked salmon. And I was like, is that it? Okay. It wasn't very satisfying. So in the interim, I'd be eating as much fruit as I could. I was eating as many protein bars and things. And I think just during boot camp, I probably put on 3 or 4 kilos. Then we go in for the final weigh-in. And I was at 115 kilos when I went out onto the land. So then we do the traditional thing where you sort of reach in and you pull out a random card which will tell you where you're supposed to go on the land. Honestly, don't know if it was rigged or not because we don't know what it was corresponding to, but it is what it is. And then they gave us the order of what time we'll be going out the following day. So I was being dropped onto the land at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which put me as, I think, the second last person being dropped off. So I had a whole day of twiddling my thumbs and waiting and going, okay, what's going to happen, what's going to happen? Finally, the time comes. They drive me down to the pier. There's a boat waiting. We get on the boat and off we go. And they've got the cameraman all set up. They've got the drone going. It was kind of overwhelming, actually. Took about half an hour to get to the spot. We get to the spot. They drop me off on the beach. I've got my pack, all my gear, and then the boat leaves. I was like, okay. I've got 30 kilos of camera gear. I've got probably the same in personal stuff, and I don't know where I am or what do I do. And this is generally where sort of a drop shock would set in, which is a feeling of overwhelming, well, not quite dread, but like, what have I done? I'm by myself. What do we do? So I had in the back of my head this entire time, okay, I'm going to be dropped in the afternoon, so I'm only going to have a couple hours of light. It might rain, so I need to get my shelter set up. I need to get a fire going, and I need to build a bed that's off the ground. So I went for a bit of a wander through my land, looking for an appropriate place to set up shelter. So what I was looking for is somewhere that didn't have any branches overhead, somewhere that was above the high water line, so in case the water would rise, I wouldn't get flooded out, and someplace that wasn't too far from the water, so I wouldn't have as far to walk each day for fishing or collecting water. The best place that I found was below the water line, and that had the most open space above. I didn't deem that as a particularly safe place, just in case it would flood, so I went for the next best option, which was next to quite a large tree, and I sort of set up, and above me there were a couple of larger branches, but the forest was so dense it was impossible to find a spot that would be suitable. And that was about 25 metres from the beach edge. So the first thing I did is I set up a straight A-frame with my tarp, and each person was given a tarp, exactly one of these, 3 metres by 3.2. And yeah, made some pegs with the axe and just sharpened sticks, tied it off, and then I went to making myself a łóżko, because I did not want to be sleeping on the ground, because the ground was actually very, very spongy and quite damp. So I set up 2 large logs, and then I cut sticks probably about yay thick and put them across the 2 logs, and then I set my bed up on top of that. First night wasn't very comfortable, but it got better. Then I went to start a fire, and I grabbed a whole bunch of tea tree bark, and basically if you've got the underside of a tree where the rain doesn't hit it, you can just scrape all that off, and that's perfect for fire starting. Got the fire going, I was happy. Then I grabbed my pot, went down to the beach. There was a really small stream that sort of just fed into it, so I grabbed water out of the stream, got that boiling, and that was my dinner that night. The one thing they didn't tell us about beforehand was the sandflies. They were horrible, like horrible. That said, I'll still take sandflies over leeches, but they were incessant. Anywhere you move, there'd be thousands of them. And if you look back at the footage, you can see in most of the shots there's sandflies just flying around. The best thing that I could find to do that is I'd just have a smouldering fire and just sort of sit in and around the smoke, which sort of keep them away. It never worked completely, but it was pretty good. And I always wore gloves and my neck warmer, and I'd wear my hair out to just cover my face, and that sort of worked. Towards the end, they sort of started to leave me alone, but you have to kill 1 million of them first for them to get the message. So then the first couple of days was spent on getting the shelter set up and my space comfortable. So bed was priority because I like to be comfortable, and if I'm not going to have a good night's sleep, it's not going to work out. I was looking for food constantly. I found that I could find fiddleheads, which are very young fern fronds that taste a little bit like asparagus when you boil them, but this was going into winter, so they weren't going to be around for too long. I found some cabbage palms as well, which were quite good. You can cut the hearts out of those and eat those. They look very similar to a yucca. There were, I forgot the name of it now, but there's another thing that looks just like a bush asparagus, and you can snap that and eat that. I wasn't allowed to eat the bugs, so no worms, no beetles, none of that, which was also a little bit annoying. And any time I'd walk along the beach or through the bush and I'd find a piece of rubbish, I'd take that with me and bring it back, thinking that maybe I could use it to make a lure, or for instance I found a couple of bottles so I could drink water out of that, or a piece of coloured plastic, or anything. Who knows what you could use it for. So first week passes, and I'm finding that the hunger pains are getting quite intense, because I'm definitely working at a calorie deficit, and I could definitely see that I was slimming down quite quickly.
How did you find enough protein to eat?
I didn't.
What did you eat, like just plants?
Yes. Weeds mostly. Yeah. Towards the end, I was finding that I was missing flavour. There was one point I had a little bit of acid reflux, and you know how you get that little bit of vomit in the back of your throat? I was excited because it was a new flavour. So the cabbage tree hearts, I could only harvest, I think, 6 of them in the end without it to stay within the rules. And I started by boiling them, and the liquid from it would taste almost like a really, really mild rossel. But the hearts themselves tasted like Brussels sprouts, and I do not like Brussels sprouts. The thing that I sustained myself on the most was a weed called hornwood. It's really, really common in fish tanks, and if you walk along lakes and rivers, you'll generally find it everywhere because it's a prolific weed, and it'll sort of find its way in and around rocks and things, and if you break it, both will still grow. And so as the tide would go out, I'd sort of walk along the beach. Well, as the lake would drop, I'd walk along the beach, and I'd keep track of this by sticking a stick at the edge of the water, and then each morning, if the water's receded a bit, it means, cool, there'll be more food that I can collect. If the water's gone up, I'd avoid going out there. And I would be collecting this hornwood. And I'll pass around a photo album later, you can actually see a picture of the stuff. And I'd eat it raw, I'd fry it, and there was no way to make it palatable. It tasted like what a dirty fish tank smells like. Yeah, but it was the only food out there. So of course I also tried fishing, and where I was located, it was a big sort of inlet, and the water all through here was quite shallow, so there was eels everywhere. I could see them. In the time that I spent out there, the entire time that I spent out there, I think I might have seen 2 fish jump in the lake. But in that particular inlet, no fish, unfortunately.
Did they explain why you couldn't eat the eels?
They said it was because of cultural significance, but in all honesty, I think it's because if we could eat the eels, we'd all still be out there. Yeah. And I was catching them left, right, and centre, and they were big eels, like huge. And the more it happens, the more frustrated you get because you only have a set amount of hooks, and if they take them too deep, then you just cut the line and hope for the best. So I tried a whole bunch of different ways of fishing. I spent time plaiting a fly line and making flies and fly fishing. I spent time building little boats and trying to get the wind to pull a hook out into deeper water. That didn't work. Just tried bottom bashing. That didn't work. At one point I walked across the edge of the inlet, and then it was probably 200-300 meters, and I'd run a line across, and then I'd try and run a line back and create almost like a way of pulling something across the middle, but the wind would just pick it up and just take it back to shore, unfortunately. So there was just no luck with the protein. That said, there were wekas, which look a bit like a kiwi, and they just walk through my camp all the time. And of course they were on the do not eat list, and I remember talking to one afternoon telling it that it's so lucky because if I could, I'd be turning it into chicken nuggets. And there are also these wood pigeons. They're native New Zealand wood pigeons, and they big, plump, and they sounded heavy as they flew through the air, and they'd be in a tree like from here to where the flag is, and you could throw a rock at them and get them, but again, couldn't eat them. So being teased by all this food and not allowed to touch it. And then, so to keep myself occupied, I set myself up on the beach, and I decided to do some carving and make some tools and things. And I've got a few things here for you guys to have a look at later as well. So I've got like a hobo fishing line. I've got some spatulas. At one point my hair was getting incredibly knotty, so I had to make myself a comb so I could just keep all that out. And I sort of had my beauty routine every day just to try and stretch out the time. And I'd start by brushing my teeth, so I'd use charcoal from the fire, and then I'd wash my face, and then I'd brush my hair, and then get annoyed by all the sandflies. And then I'd sit on the beach, and I made myself a spinning wheel. And there's a flax plant in New Zealand called harakiki, and it is particularly good for making rope. And in the 1800s, it was the biggest export out of New Zealand. All the best rope came from New Zealand, so all the big English tall ships and things were using harakiki rope. And yeah, so I just sat there and I was cleaning harakiki and making rope, and I did that for many weeks, and it was great. The other thing that I'd do just to try and conserve energy was I'd get up in the morning and I'd sit down in the sun and just try and sunbake as much as possible to get the vitamin D and try and live a pretty docile life. The one difference is that each Sunday I would decide, okay, I'm going to go and do some exploring and become like my little treat for the week. And I'd pick a cardinal direction, north, south, east and west, and just walk in that direction and see where it takes me. I went looking for better fishing spots, so I went along the edge of the lake as far as I could to find deeper water. Unfortunately, because we each had about a 4 square kilometre space to ourselves, I must have gotten to the edge, because one of the safety things that they give us is called a rock star. It's similar to an EPIRB that we had to wear on our belt all the time, and it's it has a very basic sort of analog communication system where you can key in letters and things to send and receive messages, and I got one that pinged me saying, "You've gone too far out of your territory, turn around." So I went the other way, and that was right up against the edge of the lake, and the wind was blowing straight at me, so there was no point in even trying to fish there because you can't even cast into the wind, it just kept blowing straight back at you. But exploring the bush was a lot of fun. Found a lot of different mushrooms, found like huge trees, like easily 1,000 years old, like just amazing things. And I remember one day I found a deer skull, and I was just walking and I go, oh, okay. So I brought it back and I stuck it on my shelter, and this is probably about day 40, and so I started talking to it, as you do, and I gave it a name. I called it Murray, and I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with an old computer game called Monkey Island, but inside that there was a skull called Murray. So that became Murray, and I go, "Good morning, Murray, how are you today?" And I go, "I will destroy you." It was a megalomaniac skull, and I was like, "I will walk over your corpses." What? "No, I will be carried over your corpses." Just things like that, and just little bits of entertainment like that sort of would get me through the day to day. I found that as time progressed, I was less and less hungry. The longer or the less food that I was getting, the less inclined I was to eat, and it also had an adverse effect. I later learned that I was having, well, I knew that I was having cravings, but I understood why I was having the cravings later on. So early on, I was craving hamburgers. The reason I was craving that is because I wanted the protein. Then I started craving rye bread. For some reason, all I wanted was just a piece of rye bread. And then towards the end, I was craving milk or just a vanilla milkshake or ice cream, just something with lots of dairy. The reason for that is it was my body telling me that you're going to need certain nutrients and things. And towards the end, the one that I really needed was tryptophan, which is an amino acid which helps regulate sleep. And in the last couple of weeks that I was out there, I was sleeping less and less and less, and it got to a point where I was maybe getting an hour of sleep a night. Now, 1 or 2 days is okay, 2 weeks it's a bit of a problem, and because I was getting the lack of sleep, it was almost like I was drunk. So I was stumbling as I'd be walking around, I'd be slurring a little bit, but the most annoying part was that my vision was starting to go, so it went into double vision, and then I couldn't move my head around too quickly, otherwise I'd start to get vertigo. So I just decided I'm going to have to take everything really, really easy. So I still had a whole bunch of weeds and things to eat. I ran myself a string line from my shelter to where my water source is, just in case I did go blind or something, I could still collect water and still eat. Thankfully,
so how many days after you started this effect?
It was about a week.
About a week?
Yeah.
A week after you started.
Yeah. So I'd find that I'd get up in the morning, and the way it sort of hit me was I was sitting on the beach, and I was looking out on the lake, and I was like, oh, that's a lot of birds out there. And I sort of, no, I'm seeing double. Yeah. And then I'd look at the plants nearby and yep, definitely starting to see double, because the vision started to do this, and then it went to this, and yeah, it did get pretty bad towards the end. That said, I was still functional, I was still okay. Where are we?
Did you find yourself hallucinating or going completely insane?
I've always been completely insane. Hallucinating, no. I did have some strange dreams. I spent a lot of time dreaming about food. The one reoccurring dream that I'd have is walking into a fish and chip shop, ordering a hamburger. They put the hamburger on the counter for me, and then I either don't have the money to pay for it or I wake up. Yeah, it was not cool.
In average, how many hours did you sleep at night?
Towards the end, not much. What I was doing is I'd be going to bed at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd still be awake at 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning.
How did you manage the nighttime, the darkness?
Wasn't an issue, and it wasn't really that dark. There was only a couple of nights that were particularly dark, but the moon was really, really big, and you sort of become acclimatized to it.
So you just feel comfortable?
Yeah, yeah. And once I'd built the shelter up, so what I did with my shelter is I faced the entrance towards the lakes rather than up the mountain. The reason for that is in the afternoons as the sun goes down, temperature drops, and then all that cold air will come down the mountain and then towards the lake. So by facing the entrance away from that, you don't get all that cold air coming in. And the walls of my shelter were probably about that thick. So I was using debris, so it'd be like sticks, leaves, and then I started to cover part of the shelter in insulation as well, and there's some photos that I can show you later of that. I actually found towards the end I was getting too warm. Yeah, yeah, and sitting inside a small space, it was very warm, plus the really warm sleeping bag, it was just uncomfortably warm. And I couldn't sit outside my sleeping bag because there was too many sandflies.
So in terms of the entertainment, because we are used to have, mobile phones, around radios, anything. What sort of entertainment did you have from the nature?
From the nature?
From the nature, like, birds and wildlife or...
So I watch all the small birds and things that would fly around that we weren't allowed to eat. I just watched the trees, I'd watch the water, I'd go for walks, I'd collect rocks. I've got a pile of rocks I collected off the beach. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time just contemplating big things like, does God exist? What is time? Why are we here? All that sort of thing. And then looked into Stoic philosophies as well and tried to align everything. The big one that I was thinking about always is, if God is all-knowing, how can we have free will? And just trying to find a link between those two things, because one, you can't have one and the other at the same time. So it was a lot of time just in my own head, but it was good.
Sorry, based on a lot of time in your head, did you ever have a moment of doubt and a breaking point where you thought, this is not fun anymore and you're not coping?
So I spent the first 20 days was like a holiday. From about day 20 to about day 35, it felt like, okay, I'm in the game, I'm going to play the game now. And then from day 35 onwards, it was like, okay, this is life now. Get up, do my thing, and then it became routine. I'd get up in the morning, I'd do a 30-second static shot of my shelter, then I'd do from 2 angles, then I'd sit down, I'd do my 2-minute diary. One thing I found is that time stopped existing. I'd sit down and I'd do my diary thinking, okay, I'll talk to the camera for a little bit, and it looks like it's only been, for me, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and then I check the timer on the camera, it's been 45 minutes. So
what about this basic question? Have you missed your wife, your partner, Have you ever think, that's what I'm doing here, I'm away from my partner, because this is something natural,
Yeah, I did miss my partner quite a lot, and there was at one point I was just sitting in my shelter while it was raining thinking, oh, I wish I could be sitting on the couch right now with a pizza, playing Fallout with my partner, but it is what it is. But because I'm also neurodiverse, unless something's in front of me, I don't really think about it. So that was a bit of an advantage for myself. The thing I miss the most, and I hate to say it, is flavour. Yeah. And then my pillow. Yes, so that was my day. I'd do my diary, then I'd go and do a couple of shots of walking around the place, then I'd have to do some shots of me doing some crafting things, then I have to do 3 minutes of me just staring blankly at the camera off into the distance, silent, and then you'd have to do an afternoon shot of your shelter, then you'd have to do talking to the camera about what it is that you're doing, then another shot of your shelter in the evening. So it was quite a rigid list of things to do, and I think having that sort of routine sort of helped just the time go by. And then just to keep track of the days and things, I had a piece of string tied to the front of my shelter, and then for each day I'd put a knot into the string, so each day it'd get a little bit longer, and each knot represents one day out there. Yeah, so we were coming towards the end. I was feeling quite mentally fatigued, and like I said, time, it was weird out there. I felt like I'd only been gone maybe 12 days or so. I felt like it's the end of a novel, and I'm feeling a little bit tired. I'm ready to go home, but I'm going to make the best of the scenario. And by day 50, what I was doing is I was imagining in my head that this is a mountain and my target is 100 days. So each day up to day 50 is just trying to climb this mountain. And then once I hit day 50, the rest is easy because it's all just downhill. And that also helped with sort of just staying in the positive mindset. Sorry, I've lost my spot now. So then the other thing that we'd have is medical checks every 7 to 10 days. They wouldn't let us know when they happen. What would happen is the boat would come, I'd set up the shot, they'd come and greet us, and then they'd do, basically they'd check our pulse, our heart rate standing and sitting. They'd check our feet, just to make sure we're looking after our feet. It was funny because I remember commenting to the doctor, it's like with all this interest in my feet, I should probably start an OnlyFans or something. And then they'd just do general checkup, like if you've had any cuts or how you're feeling. And that was all good. And towards the end, they'd become more frequent, and then they'd start asking more psychological questions, things like who's the current Prime Minister, just to check your mental faculties. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, things like that. What's your date of birth? Who are your parents? Where do you live? Yeah, just in case.
Date?
Pardon?
Did they ask you what date it is?
They did, and I was...
You could go wrong with it.
Yeah, but that was easy because I had my string. Yeah, I think I only got confused at one point with how many days was in...
At the end?
Pardon?
At the end?
Yeah, like whether... April, May, and... Oh, yeah, so 31 days in the month, so yeah, I could work it out. And then I remember I built a nice big bonfire to welcome spring in on the first day of September. And I also found that as the time was progressing, I was slipping more into Polish than I was into English. So I don't know if I was reverting back to childhood or something, but growing up, Polish was my first language, and I did want to speak a bit of it on the show and make them put subtitles up and have someone translate. So yeah, then it came to the last medical check that I got on day 64. The boat came, and I remember it was probably about midday. I'd set myself up on the beach for a nice day of sunbaking. I was in the process of making myself, I called it a camperlele, so a ukulele that I was making out of camp firewood. And I'm told they're about half an hour away. Okay, so it's make my way up to the shelter. I built myself a little bench to sit on because it was getting difficult sitting on the ground, standing up, and I wanted to be comfortable. The boat arrives, they get there. I'd been moving around a little bit too quickly, so I had a little tactical chunder just before they arrived. A big mouthful of water. They come and they sit me down. They go through the medical check as per normal, and what the doctor does is he does the follow the thumb thing, and this would set off my nausea, which is then what caused me to vomit in front of them. And you can see that on one of the last episodes there. Not my finest moment. And then they sort of tell me to go lie down and relax, and they have their little chat. And then they come back and say, okay, we're going to have to, I'm sorry, you're too unfit to stay on, we're going to have to take you off the land. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I go, but it's not a medical extraction. And I'm like, well, what is it? Oh, you've actually won the show. And my partner is on her way, but she couldn't be there at the time because she was stuck in a conference in Sydney. So they dragged me off the land. And so I packed up my stuff, went along, and I asked if I could leave some of my things that I could show her later on when she'd finally get here, and they were all cool with that, which was I was very happy about. And then they take me to a recovery house, and they hand me some beef jerky, and I think in the hour that I was sitting there, I would have scoffed down 3/4 of a kilo of beef jerky, just nom, 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 nom. Then it was off to do a medical check, just an initial medical check again to do heart rate and blood pressure, because we need to go through a refeeding process, because what would happen is if I just start eating anything that I want, there'd be, in order to process that food, the body needs oxygen, and then it'll suck the oxygen out of your blood. And if you do that too quickly, it can actually cause a heart attack. So they gave me my food. I asked how long I'll be in recovery for. They said generally about 10 days or so. I had my little cabin set up, and I spent the majority of the time there sitting, relaxing, drinking hydrolyte and eating salad. And I remember on the very first night, I still wasn't sleeping much, so I put on the television to see what was on, and there was an episode of Naked and Afraid, and they left the show after 3 days, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, amateurs.
What was your weight when you came out of?
I was 83 kilos, I think, so I'd lost just on 30 kilos.
Wow. Over 60 days.
64 days, yeah.
How many days the second person survived?
63. So what happens is once the second last person says, I'm done, the next day they come and they'll get the next person.
How many competitors there were?
10. Yeah, so we're all set up in our own individual spots, our own little 4 kilometre square area to do our filming, and yeah.
Are you still in touch with them?
Pardon?
Are you
Yes.
still in touch?
Yeah, so a year later we all went camping together, and I'm catching up with a few of them later in the year as well.
Do you think you would stay much longer? What's in retrospective, what do you think?
If I wasn't moving as quickly that day, I would have been okay. And the doctor actually told me afterwards if I didn't vomit in front of him, he would have left me out there. I'd keep going as long as I could.
Were you allowed to use sunscreen?
No, we couldn't have sunscreen.
Did you sunburn at some point?
No, thankfully not. I was covered up most of the time,
Would you do the whole thing again?
100%. I get to spend 2 months and not have to talk to people.
You can choose from, because you choose those one. What else you can choose to survive on this time?
Well, that unfortunately I think is a confidential thing that I'm not allowed to talk about. But what I'll do is I'll just leave this here if you want to have a look later.
You're not involved.
Yeah. Yes.
Why didn't they allow you to use mushrooms?
Because the risk of poisoning was too great, and
No, got that much.
And processing them, yes.
yeah, unfortunately.
So how was preventing people from cheating?
So you're always mic'd up. So as I am here, there's always a mic on you, and you're always filming yourself. So you'd have one camera here, one camera here. Then at night they'd also have a trail camera pointed at your shelter, so you couldn't like get up in the middle of the night and have a sneaky feed. I was so tempted to eat eel, but yeah, no. Yeah, I wish. Although I did have a rat move into my shelter at one point, which was
Find like eggs of some birds or something.
we wouldn't be allowed to eat them,
No.
and you wouldn't have eggs in the middle of winter. But yeah, this rat moved into my shelter, and I'd hear him scratching at night, and it was annoying because I was paranoid that it was going to start getting into all my things, and so I'd do everything I could to try and scare it off. Like I'd walk around and I'd pee on the outside of my shelter to try and mark my territory. Didn't work. and I saw the rat a few times. It was a ship rat, and we would be allowed to eat it, but in order to catch it, I have to build a live catch trap, and it needs to be a minimum of 70 centimetres off the ground, just so that we don't catch other things that we're not supposed to catch. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. And then I remember I left my hat sitting on my camera gearbox one evening, and it was this hat, and then the rat got into it. Yeah, that was very annoying. Yeah. Any other questions?
Did you feel when they told you that it is it and you didn't know that you actually had one yet?
When they told me that I'm being extracted,
But you didn't know yet. What
I felt melancholy, I think, would be the best thing, because I was drafting in my head the phone call that I'd have to my parents saying, sorry, I didn't make it.
Will you do it once again?
Oh, 100%.
Yes?
Yeah.
Oh.
Free holiday. It was the best holiday of my life. 100% I'd do it again. But, yeah, and I get to lose a lot of weight, and then I get to come back and eat binge on food. 100%, yeah.
Did they do a full workup on you blood-wise?
Yeah, so I've got a really big fear of blood tests. I'm okay with blood, I'm okay with needles. I just don't do blood tests. And we had to do a blood test like every second day when we got back into the recovery house. And I told the doctor I don't like blood tests, and he didn't really believe me the first time. And I was lying down on the bench, hyperventilating, going, someone get me a bucket, I'm going to puke. So in the end, they ended up giving me Valium before each one of my blood tests, just to mellow me out.
so ironic. So
Yeah.
you know, and then
Yeah, I can't do blood tests.
What did they test?
I'm not sure what they tested. It was mostly, I think it was all my levels and things, so they know what food to give me, whether I need more iron or, well, of course I need more iron, but like just so that I,
Like vitamin D, vitamin C.
yeah, all that sort of thing.
Electrolytes, potassium.
You realise that eels, particularly, are the highest source, natural source of vitamin D.
Yeah, but we couldn't eat them.
Disturbances. And your visual disturbances, yes, they did you a disfavour. Horrible. They put conditions on you that made you unwell. And the visual disturbances probably vitamin C. So if you targeted vitamin C rich foods, did you have pine trees there?
No, it was all, it was not birch, it was mostly elms. Yeah.
how did you purify the water?
So the first night I boiled the water in my pot, and then after that I thought, so leading up to it, everyone that I was speaking to was like, make sure you boil the water, make sure to boil your water. And I was sitting out there thinking to myself, I've drunk river water my entire life and I've been fine. And I'm probably
Drinking lake water.
not lake water, the river water. And I'm like, I'm in a place where there's no one else around. This is running water, it's snow melt, yeah, so I was fine.
So you had some minerals from this water.
Probably, but not nowhere near enough.
So in case of emergency, were you able to communicate?
Yes, so on this Rockstar that we'd carry with us, there was, it's got a panic button on it. So if you press and hold that for 5 seconds, it sends out a distress signal, and then they'll send someone straight away. So they'd always have a couple of boats on standby for exactly that emergency. Yeah, and we also had
If you do it, they would take you off the
yeah, regardless, if you push the panic button, that's it. We also had a satellite phone with us where if we tap out, we use that to call back and say, hello, this is me, I'm tapping out. And I remember at one point, I went to check it and I couldn't turn it on, it had stopped working. I was like, it doesn't matter.
Were you allowed to take supplements, vitamins?
No. Once we were out there, we were by ourselves. And then we'd do all our footage and things, and then we'd take the memory cards and the batteries and we'd put them into a small box down on the beach, then we'd disappear into the bush so we don't see anyone. A boat would come, they'd collect all that, and then drop fresh batteries and memory cards into the box.
Once a day?
Once a day.
Once a day, yes?
Once a day.
How many cameras did you have in total?
I had a main camera, then I had 2 GoPros, then I had a B camera, which was just in case the main camera doesn't work, and 2 trail cams.
I
So-
would like to ask about the side effects of studying.
Hmm.
Did you prepare yourself or had they educated you?
No, I prepared myself for it.
And if someone hasn't educated themselves, what
Um,
they would probably panic if they.
Yeah, so I did find that I was starting to feel a lot weaker. So what I did in order to prepare for this, well, not for this in particular, but just in case one day, is I practiced see how long I could go without food and what the effects are. So I did a week with no food, and you could feel the effects of it, how you become a lot weaker, and which is why early on I was like, I need to get my shelter done because I know it's going to get to a point where I'm going to be working at maybe 20%.
Could you do it once again, or you're not?
Yeah.
No, you told me, but is it allowed by?
They might do a winner's season or something.
Winter season, yes.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yes.
Maybe. Until then, I'll do something else.
Okay.
Well, let us know. Okay?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, so besides the sandflies, what was the number one thing that you really found the most challenging?
Lack of sleep. I think it's because I didn't have any tryptophan in my system.
Your body just starts to...
Hmm.
Did you at any point eat something that made you very sick?
No, it was weeds.
So what are the things but wheat did you eat? Did you had any protein during the
No
day?
protein.
No protein.
What mistakes did the other competitors make? Or what knocked them out of the running?
It's hard to say because I wasn't there and it's their own experience. The most common thing is people just miss being at home.
Oh, wow. So psychologically.
Yeah, it's more of a psychological game than it is a practical game, 100%.
What was the differential between yourself as the winner and the person who was, at the bottom of the ladder?
The person that left first thought they were having a heart attack.
Right. So how long did they last?
One day, I think it was the second night when they,
Wow.
and it turned out it was heartburn because they weren't used to the diet that we were having.
Wow. Okay. So then the next competitor after that person, I'm just trying to determine.
The next one was on day 4,
Wow.
and they missed their family.
Wow. So that's a huge gap.
So
64 versus 4.
within the competitors, did you have any smokers? People who smoke cigarettes?
In this season, no. In the previous season, there was one, and they were smoking right up to the point of going out on the land. And it was,
They stopped.
they stopped, but they also left quite early because they were craving. One thing I did do is I cut all caffeine and sugar out of my diet leading up to it, just so that I wouldn't have any withdrawals.
Cravings, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Your motivation, what kept you going? What was actually your goal or the goal of the...
I was on the best holiday of my life, so I was going to, enjoy it while it's there, because I'm not going to get a chance I'll never get a chance to do something like that again.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you can...
Well, I wouldn't call it suffering.
I don't know if this is appropriate question, but did you have any prizes for winning, or it is just...
Yes, so the prize was $250,000.
Wow.
That was the motivation.
Thanks.
Bravo.
I didn't do it for the money. I never thought that I'd win. It was just dumb luck, really.
Did they deliver?
Pardon? They did. Yeah.
So what did you do?
What did I do?
That is a bit too far.
So, leading up to the show starting, I'm a really big fan of Lego. And when I was growing up, I really liked the pirate Lego. And
Worth of Lego then.
not quite. And I had the pirate ship, but there was also a set called the El Dorado Fortress. It was done in 1989, and I never got that. And then coming up to the start of the show, they'd advertised that they're doing a new version of the El Dorado Fortress, and it was being released the day that I was going out on the land. So I was like, when I get back, I'm buying myself that Lego regardless.
So one more question. When you watch shows similar like that on TV, in retrospective, what do you think? When you watch after your experience.
I noticed the cameras.
Yes.
Yeah, so like everyone's got either GoPro attached themselves, or you'll see a little GoPro on a little tripod or something. And I didn't notice it beforehand, but afterwards I noticed it. And then I can also pick the shots that were staged and the shots that weren't staged.
Okay.
So
Thank
the
you.
batteries lasted that long, or you were provided?
So we were provided with half a dozen batteries for the GoPros, and then similar for the main camera. And then anything that was flat you would put into that box, and then it would get swapped over.
So many questions.
So,
Did it cross your mind that you may not survive?
Like actually die.
Drop dead.
There was one night where there was a really heavy storm, and I was a little bit afraid because of the branches above me that might fall. My thought was, if something cracks, I'm just going to roll off the bed and lie next to it, because it was a really solidly built bed. But then I thought about it and go, you know what, if it's going to happen, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm not going to worry about it. And that was probably a turning point. I just stopped caring, and I just, if I die, I die. If I don't, I don't.
Monash freeway is probably
Yeah,
more,
yeah, 100%.
They said that your shelter was one of the best out of all the series. What motivates you to build such a strong shelter?
Because I've always wanted to build one. and I
How
didn't.
difficult it was?
It wasn't difficult at all. It was just time consuming. And I've got the photos of the shelter here if you'd like to have a look, because the walls were like this. And you could see the progression, because I was like, okay, I've read about building a debris shelter. This is how it's done. But until I've actually done it, I don't realize, like, okay, do it like this instead of like this, because the walls will look better, or this will be better reinforced. And you could see the progression, and it would get better and better as I went along. And then I'd keep one angle of my roof slightly lower than the other four. And the reason I did that is because when it rained, I could use that to collect rainwater as well.
Did you say that you had a gun, or you didn't?
No, I had the bow and arrow.
Oh, right. So there were no animals that you could kill, or you didn't?
We were allowed to hunt deer. We were allowed to hunt boar, but otherwise, I heard a deer once in the entire time that I was out there.
Has anyone actually ever shot a deer or a boar?
Not on the Australian version. I think someone got a moose once. Someone got a wolverine, but it's few and far between. And I was not at all banking on hunting. It was there just in case. I basically put all my eggs into plants.
Did you use the arrows at all?
No, didn't need to.
Yeah, you said it was winter, right? So was it a freezing temperature?
It snowed a couple of times. The coldest night I had was probably night number 20, and it was the only night that I was uncomfortably cold. I had put on my 2 pairs of thermals, my ski pants, my jacket. I was wearing my hat with the things down. I was still sitting in the sleeping bag trying to just generate heat. After that, it was perfectly fine. But I remember getting up the following morning, and the mountains were all just white.
Was there any point where you couldn't keep the fire going, or there was terrain or something?
Fire wasn't an issue. I mean, like, there was a period of about 20 days where I didn't even light a fire because I didn't need to.
did you have any clothing restrictions?
Yes, so we had a list of things that we'd be allowed to take. So, for instance, it was like 6 pairs of socks, 6 pairs of jocks, 2 jumpers, and 2 pairs of pants, one jacket, and so we just put all that together. But I spent most of my time wearing that hat and that jumper, and I actually made that specifically for the show.
Did you do any washing?
I did.
Did you have soap?
No,
No soap.
no, you can make soap out of ash, because the ash has got a really high lye concentration, and then you can use that lye then to clean clothes.
Will you apply to be on such a competition in Kamchatka or Alaska?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, if you know someone.
Is it possible to you to apply for Alaska, for example?
No, because that's the American show.
Okay,
But I think the next Australian one's going to be in the Arctic Circle.
Close
Will
by.
you apply?
That's a
Will you apply?
challenge.
I can't. I've already been on. But if I was allowed to, I would.
So in terms of your life post-winning the competition and going back to work, how did your employer react first and
Well,
what was life afterwards?
I sent him a message saying, I'll be back at work in about 3 weeks because I asked the doctor to give me 3 weeks off just so I could relax at home. And then, yeah, went back to work. I found that it took me about 3 months to get all my muscle back and be the same sort of level of fitness. Otherwise, I was perfectly fine. There was a whole bunch of interviews and things that I had to do, which I would get a bit better at as time progressed. I think the most fun thing that happened after that was I got to go to the Logies, and that was a fun experience. If you ever get a chance, I highly recommend it. And just walking the red carpet with all these stars, I got to meet the Wiggles, got to meet Red Simon. It was awesome. Then I also got in contact with a couple of outdoor companies. So Mont was nice enough to sponsor me, and they've been sending me some equipment and stuff, and I actually did a TV commercial with them. Yeah, and so otherwise life's pretty much settled back to normal, and I'm back at the fish farm doing my thing. And I did find that one of the big realizations that I have is that I really enjoy time in nature. So I make a point at least once a month to go out bush somewhere. And I highly recommend it because it's just great for centering yourself and like resetting, and then just a little bit of time by yourself is good for you.
Are you allowed to have some basic medication like aspirin or?
No. If there was medication that you're previously taking, they'd allow you to take it, but no Panadol, no aspirin, no nothing like that. I did think about that because you can actually make a bush aspirin out of willow, but I didn't find any willow trees.
Do you have any message to the Polskich harcerzy? Do you have any message after your experience, like the message to them, a special one?
Yeah. Thank you for making my life tougher with you guys than it was out there.
What were the internal dimensions of your shelter, if you were to estimate it?
So the tarp is 3 meters by 3.2, so that would have been slightly smaller than that. I had enough space to be able to sort of stand up like this inside it. I had enough space to lay out things on the ground, and I had a nice big bed.
What were your conclusions about God that you were thinking?
Well, that should be another talk. Well, God exists.
Well, thank you very much for fantastic speech.
Thank you very much.
And inspiring for us. Maybe we want to be alone sometimes, from our environment. I would like to ask you, a few questions how to do that. But anyway, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
congratulations.
Dziękuję bardzo.
That the Polish soul been alone for such a long time and survive and is happy to do it again. And we are very happy to have you here.
My pleasure. And please come up, have a look at some of the things that I brought, and then ask any questions.
And now I invite you to look at this exhibition of these items and ask questions. Very good.
Dziękuję.